start streaming, and I'm gonna start recording.
Green light.
Boop, boop, boom.
We gotta see where we're at.
I'm gonna make sure everything's going with on it here.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to pull up the YouTubes on here.
Let's see.
What's up, guys? If you can hear us, tell us where you're from. We are doing an impromptu podcast today.
So one of our guests ended up having a family emergency.
We're on.
So they had a family emergency. I figured, like, we'll do a live stream. So I'm gonna do my normal, Chewy style ramble here in a second. And then afterwards, we will dive into a little bit of Q&A and stuff like that, like we always do. And today we're gonna talk about, in just a few minutes, we're gonna talk about some ideas on sort of developing aggression in jiu-jitsu. And I say this because I get a lot of questions from people where, you get people that will say, how do I develop that aggressive mentality? Because some people seem to be born, or when they step on the mat, they seem to be given this innate gift to be aggressive where other people don't. And as we'll sort of talk about in a minute, there's a way that you can sort of foster this aggressiveness. Now, it's not going to be the aggressiveness that maybe you're going to be this reckless person who just throws caution to the wind, but a certain level of technical aggression, which is useful. And we'll talk about how to develop that. So I want to make sure that we're going first. And yeah. So you got the live stream up there. For whatever reason, it's not showing up on mine, but so you can see the question stuff. Okay.
Yep, I see him right there. We're going.
Okay, let's check. Let's see what we got here. Andrew, I've never been here this early. David Greenwood, love your videos. Thank you, brother. It's Rady. Hey, Chewy. Hey, what's up? It's Rady.
We're going to get a bigger TV eventually.
Got D. Lamon. Yeah, we're actually going to be moving the room soon. So what? Eugene is in charge of moving of getting everything to ready. We're going to have a new podcast room set up in
and we don't have Grandma's table anymore.
And we won't have Granny's table anymore.
We had a custom-built badass table.
That's right.
We'll tell you about it.
We'll have a really cool table. So we'll see that soon. Let's see.
So quit making fun of my grandma's table, jerks.
I don't think anybody's made fun of it in a while. I think it was just that old angle that because we used to have that one camera, and it would just be us sitting there. Let's see here. Jay Rannick says they can't find podcast on Google Play.
Should be on there.
Should be on there.
Why isn't it? Why can't? Because anybody else has that problem.
We haven't gotten any questions about that. So
shoot a message at Chewjitsu or the Chewjitsu podcast at gmail.com with any issues, and I'll address them. Norman, hey to you from Germany. Hope things are going well over there. Jess Berry, hey, thanks for your advice yesterday. I love how you actually respond. I'm not sure which I responded to, but you're welcome. Let's see. Can you see those? I can't see shit.
What's that?
I can't see very well.
I can see pretty well. I've got good eyesight. You need to get glasses.
Need my carrots.
Huh? I eat carrots every day. They're good for the digestion. Let's see here. I was getting to short Simmons. Hey, congratulations on your first competition win. That's exciting. We'll be talking about some of those kinds of ideas later on about kind of getting your first wins early on and what that does to someone. So again, we're going to give it about another minute just in case to kind of get everything rolling, and then we'll jump in and get into the ramble today, and then afterwards we'll talk about some stuff and do some Q&As if you want to.
Yeah, get some questions up.
Stephen Pierce, hey bud. Well, I didn't. It says S Pierce, but we know it's you, Steve. Hope you're doing well over there in the UK. Lad, hello, lad. Scroll down.
Scroll down.
Yeah.
Oh, pardon me, sir.
Well, because I can't see any. I can't see.
Just call me.
There we go.
Old Eugene. Like young Jamie. Old Eugene.
Old Eugene. Hey, I can't see what those things are going on over there. The handwriting is too small. You can make it bigger.
I was trying.
You can expand it. I can't see what they're trying to put up there.
I'm trying to expand it so it won't get bigger.
It's expanding, but it's still the same size. I can't read it. Let's see here. Oh, Steve, yeah, you got a little one due. That's fun. On Saturday, that's going to be exciting. So your daughter will be a big sister. That'll be fun. Hope the wife, everything goes well. And hopefully on Saturday you got a healthy wife and a new healthy happy baby. And
babies. Fight training. Thank you so much.
Fight training. Appreciate you. Thank you for your donation in the pounds. $4.99. Pounds.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What could that be in?
Or pounds, or I guess it could be euros. I don't know.
Euros. I think it's euro.
Okay,
maybe,
is it euros?
Maybe it's pounds.
Fight training. You tell me. Is that pounds or is that euros?
What's that equivalent to?
Because here in America we got that dollar sign, so you got the funny squiggle. And we'll while we wait for that, we'll go ahead and just jump into it. I think we've got most of the people here, and we'll get into it.
Anything else? Pounds.
Pounds. All right, so I was right. Woo, pounds.
Pounds, you Willie. That's
All
from
right.
Stephen Pierce.
Pounds, you Willie. I love every time. So when we go to Costa Rica, Steve comes down to it with us and hangs out, and it's so funny because I love the slang that British people have. It's just different. You know, it's just different. So it's like fun. But anyway, so let's we're going to kind of go off of an email that I wrote this morning, and but we'll talk about sort of the implications towards other positions as well, because it's going to be mostly about takedowns. But we're going to talk about the implications towards just other positions, just because it's the same idea, and I think you can really take this idea to pretty much anywhere in your life where you're trying to maybe develop a little bit more aggression, boldness, whatever you want to call it. And when I say aggression, by the way, guys, I don't mean reckless aggression, right? There's a difference. Like, so when I first started doing jiu-jitsu, I was reckless. I would throw myself to caution to the wind, and I would throw myself into positions and usually get submitted. And it wasn't technical aggression. It wasn't thoughtful aggression. It was just wild aggression. And I know that some people, like, they roll with someone who's a little wild, and they wish they kind of had that quality to it. Trust me, you don't necessarily want that, because people like me have to learn how to slow down. But then there are people that are maybe not aggressive at all, and they have to learn to turn it up. And either way, you can do this. But the email basically that I sent out this morning was, when it comes down to takedowns, right, in particular, I think there's kind of a 50-50 split. Assuming that both people have relatively decent technique, to me, at a certain point, takedowns, and really this goes to pretty much any technique, becomes a 50% technical thing and a 50% mental thing. You know, maybe it's 80-20, I don't know, but to me it's about half and half, because, you know, if you had two grapplers, right? Let's say you got Grappler A. Grappler A has like impeccable technique. They're so smooth when they drill. They know all the different positions. They know all the names, and they've got all this stuff lined out, right? I knew people like this back when I first started. They had like all the techniques. They knew everything. They seemed like this jiu-jitsu encyclopedia. But then if that same person is nervous, unsure, second guesses themselves when they're in the middle of a good roll or competition or whatever, there's that person, right? Now, Grappler B, will say, is a person where their technique is, it's okay, it's good, it's acceptable, but their mindset is that of, and again, we're talking about takedowns right now, is that of like a semi-truck. You know, when they're getting ready to go against someone, they have it in their mind, I'm going to like run you over. I'm trucking you over and I'm taking you down. Who do you think out of those two grapplers would be the one to get the takedown? If they were going to roll with each other, who do you think would get the takedown? You know, if it's me, my money's on Grappler B, because they have the technique that's acceptable, but they've got the mindset that's going to allow them to really execute and be aggressive to go after it, and when they see the opportunities to go for it. I remember my high school wrestling coach talking about this. He said that, you know, there's a technical aspect of a takedown. He said, but then there's that other side of it. It's all attitude, right? If you go into a match with someone and you think you're taking that person down, you have this mindset of, I'm taking you down, I'm trucking you over, I'm coming after you. That's a different mentality than being really good at the technical side and then going, okay, here I go. I hope this works out. And what happens if they smash me, and all that kind of stuff, right? And so, you know, a lot of people then say, well, how do you develop this aggressive mentality, this aggressive mindset? And for me, I think there's people that sometimes there can be sort of psychological sides of this stuff. But as far as just average stuff related to training, to me, there's a way that I tend to focus on it. First one is that you've got to experience a little success. To me, success becomes almost, it's intoxicating, it's addictive. When you get a little forward momentum going, you get excited. This is why a lot of people, you know, most of the time, they don't necessarily go into it, especially early on in jiu-jitsu, they don't go into it saying, I'm going to be a Kimura person. I'm going to be a triangle person. I'm going to be a this, that, whatever person. What ends up happening is they do a move, they experience a little success with it, and then they go, ooh, that felt good. I'm going to keep doing that move because that felt good. And so a lot of times you see that where people figure out something, you know, and we see this even, I know, in business, right? You find a way to kind of, for maybe an expression, kind of crack the nut, right? You find a way to get it going and to make something happen. That becomes addictive, and you start to go for that. And then the second thing is that you have to be able to attempt something without being completely destroyed afterwards. So, for instance, let's say that if you do a particular takedown, you have to know the ins and the outs so that this way, if the takedown fails, you don't get smashed afterwards. Or if you are going for a particular movement like a armbar, you need to know how to reclaim your guard afterwards if the armbar fails. Those two things, when you have a little success going for you and you understand how to reclaim the position should the move not work, those two things to me lead to a lot of aggression in the technical sense, not like being wild like a friggin' Tasmanian devil, just like snarling and biting and snot dripping out of your nose and just being crazy, but like a technical aggression where you're being very bold with your techniques, and when the opportunities show themselves, you go after them. To me, that's where you can develop that, and this is one of the reasons why when I teach people takedowns, for instance, because takedowns are one of the areas where I feel like in jiu-jitsu, people tend to have a little bit more fear with because of the falling aspect and the being taken down aspect. And also it just doesn't get covered as much in most gyms. And so like this last few weeks, I've been teaching my students takedowns. And, you know, I show this one takedown to a lot of people, especially when they're new. I show this this gi takedown. It's a cross collar snap down to a knee pick. It's a simple takedown that you can use literally from white belt to black belt. There literally is no belt where it doesn't work, as long as your setup's good. And it leads to a lot of other takedowns and a lot of other setups. But I show it to them because it's low risk, where if they fail, nothing happens. It's basically you're still standing. But if it works, they get some momentum going. They get a takedown and they get that forward momentum and they get that feeling of success. And that's to me, in the beginning, trying to find those techniques, I try to sort of curate those for my students early on, because I want to give them that nibble of success, because I want them to become successful in a particular position with a technique, and I want them to be aggressive with it. And so that's an idea, like that takedown. And so with that, with you guys, when you're figuring out your techniques, if you're trying to become more aggressive, one of the sort of pieces of advice that I would give to you is two things. One, pick your techniques wisely. Again, there's nothing wrong with like just trying stuff out, right? Just going for stuff, playing around, whatever. But there is something to being intelligent and sort of thoughtful about which techniques you're going to work from. And especially for some of you guys that are in that first couple years of training, I would definitely steer you towards more of the fundamentals, the basics, the simple stuff, because the simple stuff is more likely to work early on, and you can always build upon that stuff later on. But I think that it's important because you're more likely to use it, right? You're more likely to use something that's a little bit more on the simple side than some really complicated move that this black belt's using at a high level that, you know, again, is just lots of different steps. To me, keeping the steps simple, finding simple techniques at work or simple techniques that are effective that you can implement more quickly. And then also understand, like, what do you do if that technique fails? So this way you can reclaim your guard, your top position, your whatever it might be. Just making sure you're in a good spot, because if you have those two things covered, where you have a simple technique that you have a decent chance of actually hitting during a roll, and you know how to make sure that if it doesn't work, you don't get completely smashed afterwards, those things can lend themselves to becoming aggressive with the technique, and you know, that sort of thing. So that's kind of my idea on it. Just again, there's more ways to develop aggression that I could get into, but those are two from a technical sense. If you want to become technically aggressive, you need to have techniques that work for you, that are effective, that also won't get you completely smashed afterwards, or at least understanding how not to get smashed afterwards, so that this way you can really go for them without having to worry in the back of your mind about, well, what if this doesn't work? Because a lot of times for a lot of people, that's where, like, for instance, with takedowns early on, a lot of people are like nervous to go for a full-on double leg, because they're like, well, if I go for the takedown, they're going to sprawl and smash my face to the ground, and if it's not going to work, and then I'm going to get my back taken, and they're going to choke me, and it's going to be all bad from there. Whereas if you can find techniques that maybe ease you down to that position first, it's a little bit easier to get to. So just an idea with you guys today for developing some aggression in your techniques.
Yeah, I think the key is getting out of your comfort zone, because you can get stuck in things that work, and that really hinders your progression, your growth. So, you know, for me, for example, I mean, I've been training for 12, 13 years, and there's certain positions that I like to get into. I don't have to necessarily go for the takedown to get in those positions. So for me, like, I got comfortable with certain things, and now, you know, just working for 2 weeks in these positions that are really working takedowns, starting from standing. You know, I don't mind starting from standing, but I think I made a rule to myself. So if you're out there and you're someone that maybe prefers to play off your back, but you want to get better at takedowns, make a rule for yourself that when you are working on the feet, that you go for the takedown. Don't get tired and pull guard, or don't just go for the takedown. Go for it regardless. Even the worst case scenario, or not the worst case, but one of the scenarios that could be is you're going to get your takedown defense better.
Yeah.
Because you're standing for longer. So like I've got guys like my colleague who's collegiate little wrestler, Jeff, who has an incredible double leg blast double. So I forced myself to stand with those guys, and there's no escaping because that's their world. It's not my world as much as I want it to be. It's not going to be. And so it got my takedown defense better and got my comfort even just standing, exchanging grips so much better. And so I forced myself to not get in those sacrifice throw positions, or those positions where I'm not going for I am working a takedown, but not the one like shooting in.
Sure.
Shooting is the big thing.
Well, and to me, it goes back to developing a certain level of confidence in in a thing. So a sort of a parallel that's not necessarily technically related, right, is when I first got into the business stuff. When I got into the gym business stuff, taking the leap, I was incredibly unsure of myself, had no clue what I was doing. And, I thought we had a really cool gym. I thought our gym was amazing, and we had people coming in, and generally people like stuck around and the gym, that kind of thing. So I was like, well, we've got this really cool thing going on, and I would like more people to be a part of it. And so I started looking up information about marketing and things like that. And I remember when I first started doing that stuff, I felt very unsure about stuff. Like when I would send out messages through different places or an ad or whatever, I would feel very unsure. And I remember when I started to experience a little success, like all of a sudden, like someone say, "Oh yeah, I saw your email that you sent out, and I wanted to come in and check your gym out." I was like, "Oh, really? You saw it? Like that? It actually worked, right? Like
awesome.
it actually was successful." And it was in those moments where then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, okay, this is working." And then like all of a sudden these people are coming in, or even the way that I teach classes. When I was first really teaching classes, I remember being very unsure of myself because, again, I'm thinking to myself, I don't feel all that special, and now I've got to teach these people. And the way that I look at gyms is that people come in with hopes, dreams, aspirations, goals, all this stuff, and now they're looking to me to be like, hey, help me do this thing. It's a lot of weight, for at least it was for me. It was a lot of weight on my shoulders because I thought about the way that I came into the gym and the way that I looked at the coaches, and now they're looking at me the same way, and to me I felt a lot of pressure, and I still do. But I started teaching the classes and really did a good job of put a lot of effort into it and started to figure some stuff out. And I remember teaching people certain little details and things of that nature, and then seeing them go to a competition, a mixed martial arts fight, or even during the middle of a hard roll.
Yeah.
And seeing them use those exact things we talked about, and seeing that the ways that I was teaching them was being successful, that was exciting. It gave me a little confidence. Maybe I do know what I'm doing, right? Yeah. And so I think that a lot of times early on, it's that kind of thing. Like you may start on maybe the less aggressive side, but as you develop confidence in your techniques and your abilities, you start to develop a bit more of aggression because you become confident in the fact that, maybe I don't suck at this.
Right.
And so that's why I think it's so important to pick like good, strong, fundamental techniques early on, and even later on. Like to me, I'm a fundamentals guy. I have a few kind of tricky techniques, but for the most part, if you watch my game, it's like, it's fundamentals. It's very basic. But the thing is like those are the techniques that work for me, and so I keep using them because it allows me to be ultra aggressive. Like when I roll in competition, like from start to finish, I don't really stop moving, and I'm trying to be very aggressive for my movements because I feel very comfortable and confident with everything that I'm using because I've been using it for so long. So I think that a lot of times you want to put some thoughtful effort on the techniques that you're choosing. To me, it's like it's usually, not always, right, but usually a better policy to aim for simplicity, right, and straightforwardness rather than doing something that maybe really looks cool but you have no chance in hitting. Now again, if you're playing with it just to see, it's one thing, but if you're really trying to develop that ability to be aggressive and whatever else, you need to stick with the techniques that are easier for you to really implement, easier for you to execute, which usually typically means a little bit more simplistic.
Yeah. Well, I think you're building reps into it, by doing something that's maybe something you can hit more frequently or something you can go for more frequently. I think you're building those reps in, and I think even if you don't get the takedown, but like I was mentioning, like you get little instances of like, all right, I'm able to sprawl or get better takedown defense, or I'm actually able to take a shot, but not get my back taken. I'm able to take a shot, scramble back to the feet, whatever. I can do that consistently and not get, and then so you're getting those glimmers of hope and that confidence a little bit. And I was going to ask you, so for people maybe that are newer to jiu-jitsu or working takedowns, whatever they're doing, how do you stay motivated, or how do you not get discouraged? I think the main thing is, how do you not get discouraged? Say, man, I'm just trying these takedowns. Shit's not working. I just can't get it. How do you stay kind of
now?
on
It's
top of
easy
that?
to do that for any position, because I remember even running into this at different points in times where I'd get frustrated with positions, even as like purple belts, when I was trying to work on stuff. But a good way would maybe illustrate with when I was a white belt and I was beginning to work off my back.
Yeah.
If you guys know the story, it was forced. My coach basically, he made me start on my back and didn't give me much of a choice in the matter. He said, hey, listen, you're starting on your back because you won't put yourself there voluntarily.
Exactly, yeah.
And you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner. You're not a wrestler. You're a jiu-jitsu player. You need to learn how to use guard. So I was playing off my back. So initially, I was terrible. It felt like as soon as my legs opened, boom, I would get smashed.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. And so I started doing things like making like little small wins, right? Where a win for that day would be, well, I held Bob in the guard for 3 minutes instead of 2 minutes. Right? Because if I'm holding the person in guard, then I'm holding them in a dominant position, and the longer they're there, the more opportunities I have to attack. Yeah. I'm in control. And then it started to be, well, I opened up and went for an armbar, it didn't work, and I reclosed my guard. That was a win. Because then I was getting the ability to open and close and not lose everything. Yeah. Open and close, open and close. And then it became, okay, now I'm able to hit a sweep or a submission. Then it became, okay, well, now I'm going to try to hit 3 or 4. I would make little, I still do this to this day. I play little games in my head. So, for instance, when I'm rolling with some of the guys in the gym, let's say that I'll look up at the clock and there's like 1 minute left. I'll say, okay, I have 1 minute left. I'm down by 2 points. So I've got to score a takedown, and I've got to get a point afterwards to win the match. That's kind of the thinking. I play these games all the time. Or I'll say it's 1 minute left, and I've got to get the submission. And I'll play those games. And so same thing there is just you can kind of play like little mind games with yourself where you say, listen, I've got to just little wins, not big wins, little things. I can hold the person in guard, or, I was able to last on the feet for a little bit longer than yesterday. I only gave up 2 takedowns today instead of 3. Yeah. Those are like little small things that you can focus on that aren't the big thing, but they're leading to the big thing, right? Because the big thing means that you were successful with something. That's sometimes a tall order in the beginning. Having just like little goals like that, those are super. They're manageable, and they're worth putting into place. Because again, a lot of times people, they really don't put much stock in the little small things. It's like, for instance, every one of us is just basically, we for the most part, we become our actions. Most people don't really, they put thought on big things. I want to make this much money. I want to get this job. I want to do, all the big stuff, right? But then they don't say, well, what's the small little action that I could do that could lead to that? Get up 30 minutes early and read. Get up 30 minutes early, do some meditation. Yeah. Go for a workout after you do this, or whatever it is, right? There's all these like little things that you could do daily, right, that would lead to. They're like drops in a bucket. So a lot of times it's like those things. So you got to look at those little small drops that you can make to fill the thing up. So instead of saying, well, I've got to sweep the person, well, could you just start by opening your guard up, going for something and closing it again if it doesn't work? Because that's going to give you better control of the position. Could you just hold the person in guard? Because the longer you can maintain control of that person while they're in your guard, the more opportunities you're going to have. Right. It's the same way on the feet. It's the same exact thing. So when you're talking about developing that ability to do that stuff, I think that's kind of where you got to start with giving yourself some small actual winnable goals, like where you can say, man, I did it. Like, for instance, even when when I was like a white belt and a blue belt and I was starting to get kind of good and I'd roll with like a black belt or something, I would say, okay, well, I'm gonna get my ass kicked, but maybe I can hang in for like 2 minutes. You know what I mean? And that'd be my thing. I'd be like, I'm hanging in for 2 minutes. Okay, I got my butt kicked in like 2 minutes. Okay, good. Well, I made it for 2 minutes. Maybe I can make it to 3. Yeah. And those were the things I used to look at because I knew I wasn't gonna like win, or I knew it wasn't gonna get everything right. But it was just those things. Now later on, as I became a purple belt and brown belt and black belt, one of the things I focus on now, like let's say if I'm working on a new position, one of the things I'll do is I'll say, okay, my goal is to just get to the position. I don't care what happens after that. I'm just gonna get there. If I can get there, that's a win for me because it's an entry. Then after I can get there kind of reliably, then I'll say, okay, now I'm just going to try to hold the position once I get there. Like I'm going to get there and see if I can control. Right. And then if I can control, then I can sweep, or I can submit or whatever it is, that kind of thing. So just some ideas. Those are some ideas for training that I think are kind of actionable that you can actually put into use.
Yeah. And one other thing, which makes a huge impact, which is not anything you can do yourself, but your training partners that you're working with. Those people that are a little bit more experienced or upper belts that can give you some feedback and some encouraging words from time to time, like, hey, man, it was a lot harder to take you down this time. Or, another thing, was like, we have a blue belt that comes to the morning class, Dakota, and I was like, dude, if you're supposed to be the nail right now with upper belts, but you're making everybody work. Everybody's got to work
good.
against you. That's exactly it. Like when you and I roll, I'm like, if I can make you work, even though I get my ass kicked, that makes me feel good.
How do you know? Like here's a great example, and I know you'll answer this in a way where I'm thinking. How do you know, like that? Like if we're rolling, like what's a satisfying feeling that you can feel for me? Like what makes you think that, man, I made him work today?
So a number of things. There's not really the timing changes. The speed that you move. There's no wasted movements. You're not waiting. Like you're not like I'm gonna allow. Like you basically go to one and then one position. As soon as you get it, you go directly to the other. There's no waste. It's just the pressure. You can tell there's a different type of there's a different force.
I turn my burners on.
Exactly.
That's what I call it. So basically, like, so when one of you guys does something, when one of you guys does something to me, I'm like, all right, like, so that's where I'm gonna turn it on, because now it's like you're nipping at my heels, so now I've got to go a little bit harder.
Yeah.
And like I tell people, like, don't ever take that as a negative thing. Take that as the absolute best thing ever, because it's like when remember, like, so I was a kid that grew up in the '80s. So in the 80s, you had all those martial arts movies, and every fantastic 80s movie had the montage, right? You had the guy would go into training, and, for instance, Rocky III, he goes into the training, and he can't do anything. He's getting beaten the sand by Apollo. He can't do the drills, and then all of a sudden, by the end of the montage, he's hanging with Apollo. He's getting all the drills down. He's boxing good, looks real good, everything else. In Bloodsport, my like favorite childhood movie, he gets in there, and at first he's getting his butt kicked, he's getting thrown around by his sensei, and then by the end of it, he's like, he's putting the tee down, and he's blindfolded, and the sensei tries to hit him, and he catches it,
blocks it.
He blocks it, and then he goes back to his tee or whatever, to show that he's gotten that far.
Yeah.
And so for me, a lot of times, I was trying to do that with my coaches. I was trying to be like Jean-Claude Van Damme and like nip at him and start beating him a little bit, or be like Rocky against Apollo in Rocky III, right? I want to get better. I want to get to the point where like you're having to work, where you're like, oh crap, it's not easy anymore. And for you guys, those are the moments where I'm happy about, like, oh snaps, he just choked me. Like, he just got me in a leg lock. He just got this on me. Okay, I'm going to have to turn this up a little bit and let him know,
Shoulder roll.
In the best way possible.
For sure.
Because, again, it's not like I'm angry at them for beating me. It's more of like, all right, they're getting better. All right, now we're going to have to give them Chewy level 6 or something. Like, we'll turn it up a little bit more. And, so that's always a fun
Usually
thing.
you enjoy the beatdown after that. You're like, well, all right, I tried. I kind of poked him a little bit, and I made him work. So that's always what you want. And that's honestly, that's like that's you expressing, like, almost, to me, it's like expressing appreciation.
Sure.
That, like, I have to challenge myself. I have to actually give you my best, or near my best, or whatever. Because usually you're not probably as mean as you would be if you were actually at a tournament.
I'm never tournament mean. No.
Yeah.
Not in the gym. Not like every now and then, like when we're doing really hard competition training, I might be. But tournament Chewy is just like, I can't even access that mindset, because like when I'm doing it, like I have no regard for the person on the other side. Like in the gym, no matter how hard I'm going, I want to make sure that you guys are safe. And like, it doesn't matter. It's like, like even when we have guys like JT and stuff, even when I'm going with those guys, I'm going hard, I still have a lot of regard for their bodies and their health. Whereas in a competition, you're just going, and there's no regard for the other person. You mean no ill will or anything, but you're just like, I've got to go 100%. But even like with that, like, so I get the same experience. Like, so for instance, I remember when Muhammad came down and we were rolling. He kind of started off slow on me and stuff, and I ended up doing a butterfly sweep to him. Yeah. And I remember that was the only thing that I think I probably did in that whole roll where it was like a worse something, because he goes, man, it was a pretty good sweep. Like, he's like, he gave me a compliment, and I was okay, great. But afterwards, he like literally just decimated me. JT Torres, when we were rolling, we both started slowly, ramped it up, and then he started to just turn it up another gear that I couldn't follow. Basically, he turned it up, I turned it up, I turned it up, he turned it up, and we got to the point where we're going, and then he just kept going, and I couldn't follow, and I was like, damn. All right, this is it, So it's but it's always a cool feeling. That's one of the few things that I love about jiu-jitsu. It's one of the things that hooked me in the very beginning. When I got into jiu-jitsu, from the moment, I remember walking out that first day, got my butt kicked by everybody, and I was like, this was so cool. I couldn't do anything. I got my butt kicked. This was amazing. I need to do this stuff. I need to learn this, and I want to be here doing this stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't a discouraging feeling. I was happy about it because it made me feel like I was at the right place, and these people knew something, and I could maybe, if I worked really hard, I could get to something too.
Right. Well, for me, it was so out of my realm of normalcy of playing team sports, and like, I just remember like this is just the coolest thing. It's something because I was such a big UFC fan, and just seeing that and then actually being able to do some portion of that was like for me just huge.
Yeah.
I was like, I remember being in a tournament one time, and I don't even know what belt I was, but I'm looking around at people and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? This is so out of my element for anything that I've ever done in my sports career, so to speak. But it was just so cool to be there and to experience and to do something that difficult. That, jiu-jitsu can be not as difficult, like at some points, you can really love it at some points, but like some days when you're like tired and a little beat up and you go and you have a hard training session,
It's hard.
it is.
It's hard.
And that's what makes it worth it. Those times when you're just not on your A game, you don't feel the best, haven't had enough sleep, that's part of it. Like people always ask, I'm sure they ask you, well, how do you get better? How do I get better? I was like, dude, you show up consistently and do your best consistently. It's not gonna be, you're not gonna be able to at your best every day, but you do what you can. Don't skip. Like if you have to skip practice, that's fine. Like, if you have something else going on, but like don't skip because you don't feel like it.
Sure. And it's those are the things, right? Like everybody, like I've never met anybody that said, man, you know what? I want to be really mediocre at this.
Nobody likes getting smashed.
Yeah. But the thing is, as you said, it requires a certain level of consistency and dedication. And there's some like mental stuff that can be a part of it, and training habits that can increase progress and all that stuff. But what it boils down to is eventually you have to be consistent. You got to show up and you got to do it. And again, one training session seems kind of insignificant, but one training session, every other day for 10 years is not.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the small things, right? The drops in a bucket. It's what it is. It's the actions, right? You have a choice. What do you want to do? And again, I'm not saying jiu-jitsu, everybody has to be amazing at jiu-jitsu. This could be anything. Like if you could be in other martial arts that you want to get into, I don't care. But it all kind of boils down to the same stuff. You got to show up and you got to put in the consistent work.
Yeah, I agree. It's not always easy. And do you remember your first submission that you ever got?
In the gym or at home? Because I started training at home.
Okay, so maybe at home, I don't know, but
we trained. So back in the day when I first started training, me and my buddies got together, and we used to train on like a couple of layers of carpet, and we would just beat the shit out of each other.
Showed. So like I remember for me, I remember hitting I think it was a triangle choke on this white belt. I remember it too for some reason because I hit it and I was like, holy shit, it worked. And I was like, then you kind of feel like you got a little. Then you start, you get better at jiu-jitsu, and you feel like when you're still new at it, and like you feel like you kind of have a superpower against like the regular everyday
You just got
person.
more confident. Yeah, you just like all of a sudden, you just, as I said, you did something, you had success. Maybe I don't suck at this. Maybe I actually have something to this.
It's like it works. Shit works. And you're like, wait a second. Like, because I come from doing Taekwondo for like not like for 1 year I did it. And I never put that into practice, right? I was 6 years old. So, but I never used, and I was like, actually like, oh, this is like a martial art, and like I can actually apply it right now, and it can actually work. I can learn a skill, because we do it all the time. We learn a move, like a kimura or a guard pass, whatever it is, or a sweep, and then like everybody's trying to hit it, and then people are hitting it, because you always go, hey, how many people hit the move today? And some people raise their hands and stuff, but it's just like when you hit it, it's like, holy shit, it works, number one, and then like I hit it on people that knew it was coming as well, which is also kind of cool. But
do you know why you quit Taekwondo?
My parents didn't want to pay for. I think I was like a white belt for like a year. We didn't have a lot of money, so like they thought I just going out there, me doing like the katas, the same katas. I still remember them to this day. I still remember this one kata to this day. Yeah. And my brother got like a green belt or whatever, but I was young and they're like, oh, just show up, because you have to pay for a belt test.
Yeah.
So like we didn't have a lot of money, and they wanted me to do something, and so that's probably why they stopped taking us, I guess.
I went to Taekwondo when I was 7 because I couldn't fight in the kumite. So the instructor, I remember like looking at the kids that were advanced.
Was he at least like an Asian man of some sort?
No, it was a large American man. And I remember being in the class, and we would do all our all that stuff. And I remember getting there early one day, and I was looking in, like peeping through, and I could see in the distance in the back of the room, because it had that school windows where it was kind of like the windows weren't exactly clear, and it had like the wire inside of it, so you're kind of like looking through, and I can see in the back, I can see these kids, they were like going after each other, they were like punching, and they had all the helmets and gear and stuff, you know. And then I remember they came out of it, and like they were, there was blue belts and red belts and all this stuff, and I'm thinking, wow, they're sparring. So I went up to the coach that day, the instructor. I said, you know, I probably called him sensei or whatever the heck we were supposed to use back then. And I said, sir, when can I do the sparring? When can I do that? And he said that whenever I got to a blue belt.
Okay.
You know, blue belt. I don't know. I can't remember the belt ranking, but as long as it seemed to be for a kid my age, that seemed like an eternity.
Yeah.
So I lost interest. Like, eh. So, but I kept going. And then I remember the moment where I kind of lost faith in it. We were supposed to have board breaking to do break boards, and I remember overhearing one of the guys say, "We can't break those boards because it rained, and it like I guess maybe would like mess with the wood or something.
It was like more pliable.
Make it
Like it would bend more.
It would bend. It wouldn't break as easy.
Right.
And so I was thinking to myself, well, wouldn't that be good? You know, wouldn't it be good that it would make us like tougher? And then I remember when I broke the board, I had no training previously. So I'm thinking, you know, I told the guy, like when we get up there, he was like, do you want to do a like a karate chop, or do you want to do, or he didn't say karate, but do you want to do like a chop, a palm strike, or a stomp? And I remember telling him, well, I haven't practiced this at all. He said, it's okay. Just which one do you want to do? I guess I'll do the palm strike. And so I go up there, and they like hold the board, and they're like, you ready? I'm like, okay. I was like, I haven't practiced. He's like, oh, you'll be fine. Just do this. I'd never learned a palm strike. Like, okay. So then, you know, you hold the board and like do that and break it, and it broke, and they hand me 2 pieces of balsa wood afterwards, and I'm like looking at it, you know, like, this is it? Like, this is it? I was like, as a kid, I felt like just calling shenanigans.
You, as a kid, as a 7-year-old kid.
I just like, this isn't, you know, I agree. No, there's not to say that there's not good Taekwondo or karate schools, because there are. But for me, it was just kind of one of those things where I didn't care for it. And so me and my buddies would just beat the crap out of each other in the backyard.
It's a piece to the puzzle. I mean, like, I think if you want to be a martial artist or like fight MMA, you got to know a little bit of everything. You have to have I mean, look at Lyoto Machida is a classic example of karate, you know, karate style.
You got to know some
that
striking.
shit works, man. Like, it does. But
it
like,
does.
How many people get to the level of that they're actually sparring like that?
Well, see, and that's the thing. Like with jiu-jitsu, with wrestling, and all these other things, I got into them. Even boxing, I was obsessed with boxing for several years because I got to try it. I got to do it. That was addictive to me because it was like I get to do the move, and then I get to see if it works.
Yeah.
Do the move, see if it works. And learning those things. I would learn how to do a particular slip or particular combination of boxing, and then go try it out. Not just, you know, do it over and over again and no feedback. And so once I like got into a martial art, then I was sold.
Yeah. Those are fun. And those are good experiences to have too. I think you have an experience like that where you kind of try martial art and maybe it doesn't work. It just gives you more information that's not something for you, and you can kind of find something else that, you know, you're probably an aggressive kid too, I'm sure.
I don't know. I mean, I wasn't mean.
Well, you did wrestling.
I'm naturally
even
aggressive.
Before wrestling, I think you did some football, right?
I did football. I did. I'm naturally. I have an aggressive, like, I have some aggression in me. You know, like I'm naturally aggressive when I need to be. I'm not mean necessarily, but I definitely have some aggression. I've had it as a kid, like where if I needed to like turn it on, or I could be aggressive. Yeah.
You know, if I was just thinking about like being a physical therapist and the shit that I've seen. Like if my kids wanted to play a sport, I would let them 100% do wrestling. I was not playing wrestling, but I would have them do wrestling as opposed to football.
Oh, of course.
100%. I've seen so many like terrible knee, and I'm not saying those can't happen in wrestling. They do, but like, man, like there's so much, I feel like more likelihood that some of that will happen. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass for this one, but like I just don't know. I've seen like a lot of head trauma, and a lot of like terrible knee injuries, like just.
You talking about a high level of football?
No, I'm talking about high school, man. Like high school. I've seen just some. When you got little kids running, they can't hit each other as hard. If you're like middle school age, something, they can't hit each other as hard, or like, you know, I think they're more resilient.
Sure.
A little bit. But then you get older, some of these kids have like a lot of strength and power.
Oh,
and you got
man.
these little kids out there, like, you know, people mature at different ages. You got you got a 16-year-old that can look like they're like 30, 250 pounds. You got a 16-year-old that can be 130.
Oh, bro, there was
You
a
know,
guy.
it's-
I remember when I played football my last year. I was up against this kid. He ended up going to a D1 school on a scholarship.
Yeah,
He
it's
was
scary shit.
he was when he was playing defense. I was the left tackle, and he was the guy opposing me. He was 275, 280. He ran like a 4-something 40, like high 4s 40. He was so quick, and I mean, there's nothing I could do with that dude. I mean, he was a freak of nature, you know. And again, we're both 17, 16 years old, but I mean, when you were to see us next to each other,
Yeah, you don't look the
he
same.
looks like a man, you know. Like, he looks like a man. I look like a young boy in comparison. And so, you know, locking up with that dude was just getting ragdolled around.
Well, you're giving like these kids like almost like not a spear, but like a blunt object on their head, and they're going to use it to hit you with it. And like, dude, you got somebody tackling you from one side, and somebody going low on your knee, or maybe
Sure,
inadvertently, dude, it's over.
Yeah.
There's so many variables to get injured. So I don't know. I know we're getting off topic, but
No, I mean,
for me, it's
now
just,
the one thing I will say is that, again, if someone wants to do it, whatever. You know, I mean, it sucks, but it is one of those things where I would never want it to be like forcibly banned, because
people should do it
because
100%.
it's whatever you want to do, because again, there's no guarantees in life.
I'd never ban
You
shit
know.
for like a sport like that.
Well, for instance, like I remember one time I was sitting in I think I was sitting in like a little coffee shop or like somewhere eating breakfast one morning. This is years ago, and I heard a woman say she's like, "Oh, football should be banned."
Hell
You
no.
know, and I looked at her, and you know, it was someone that obviously doesn't take good physical care of herself. You know, and I'm thinking, well, so you want this to be banned? They can go back. I mean, again, it is what it is. Like, people are taking part of this sport, and there's repercussions to it. It is what it is.
Ban
right?
McDonald's.
But you can, you know, go to the red and yellow clown and eat yourself to sickness.
Yep.
You know, you do what you want to do.
That's right.
You make your choice. Like, don't tell people what they can and cannot do. People can make their choices and let them decide for themselves.
Well, it's like weren't they going to do like put a tax on sugar or something, like an increased tax to like stop people from drinking so much sugar? I was like, dude, people are adults. Let them do whatever the hell they want.
Well, I mean, it's not going to stop anything, because I mean, look at cigarettes. Cigarettes are expensive. It doesn't stop.
yeah.
It doesn't, like, you're still going to have the hardcore smokers. They're going to smoke no matter what.
I know.
They'll start rolling their own and stuff. You know.
It's more expensive.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I would never say ban like any kind of. I mean, shit. I think it's cool. I think football's great. If you're built for it, go for it. You know, if you have a talent.
It's one of those sports where definitely there's like a physical thing where, like, you can't, like,
hell yeah.
not ever, like, for instance, jiu-jitsu can work for so many different body types. You can't just play football, right? Like, I mean, you can play it in like high school and stuff, but if you're going to go beyond a certain level, you've got to be like a physical, like, certain, like, you need to be this height to this height, this weight to this weight, this strong, this fat. I mean, there's so many physical prerequisites if you're going to be decent at it. You know,
It does, yeah, and I think when you're a great point when you're talking about jiu-jitsu. Like, jiu-jitsu is one of those things where I think what draws people to it is there's so much variability. You got somebody that can be a really solid wrestler versus a tall, lanky guy that plays off his back, and they can have an amazing battle, like a battle of styles. You know, so I do agree. Like, I think that's one of the draws to jiu-jitsu, because I think somebody posted on the chat. They're like, I'm 44 years old and I just started jiu-jitsu. It's like, you can't start football at 44 years old, but you can start jiu-jitsu at any age and actually have some success at it and
Sure.
be pretty good.
Well, and there's also lots of with jiu-jitsu, there's lots of opportunities for people to compete with, you know, people of the same skill.
Right.
You know, and another thing is, you know, I had an eye-opening sort of moment when I was a white belt going to some of my early tournaments where I'd watch the hired belts go and, you know, watch them. Like, oh, cool, let's see who wins, and you know, see these purple belts go, and you'd see like the nerdy looking purple belt guy step out there against like the friggin' jacked wrestler purple belt with like traps up to his ears, and he looks like he friggin' just, you know, eats protein shakes like constantly. Huge dude. And then you watch him roll, and the nerdy guy wins, and like handedly. You're like, what other sport do you see that where like the person with the less, as far as physical power and strength, because typically physical power, strength, these sorts of things, these are huge things for sports. Whereas this person is able to finesse his way to beat this other person.
Right.
Granted, I'm not to say that there isn't technique in other sports, because there 100% is. But typically speaking, when you have a very big difference in power and strength and stuff like that, I mean, like if they're doing like football, I mean, you know, I mean, the dude's getting trucked.
Yeah.
You know what it is? But
Yep.
but if they're doing like jiu-jitsu, like, oh, you got a chance. You know, because of the way the positions work. Even in wrestling, it's really hard for there to. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can still get away with it, but when the big sizes and differences, they make a huge role. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, I feel like because of the way that people can kind of sit back, they can play certain guard positions. It's not about just pinning the person. The power is great if you have it, but it's not. It doesn't make it or break it for you.
Right.
So
it definitely is an advantage, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's not like the factor that's going to decide a match. Or
Well, it could be, but it's not going to. It's not going to say it's not going to determine your ability to be good, right?
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah.
you know, like for instance, for instance, like basketball, there was a cool book called The Sports Gene, and they were talking about the physical characteristics of successful basketball players, and they found these different correlates with their arm length to height ratio.
Right.
Essentially, if that wasn't in place, your likelihood of being a basketball player successfully in the NBA was pretty darn low. With jiu-jitsu, it's like you don't necessarily have to fit into a mold,
Right.
because there's so many different positions, techniques, and ways of playing. So you can be that really like aggressive, fast-paced, whatever, or you can be more of the methodical, sit back and play guard and sort of be a counter fighter, defensive fighter. There's lots of different options.
Yeah, it makes me I was just thinking, like, what body style or body type or what style of jiu-jitsu suits, you know, certain tournament formats best. You know, I know, does that make sense? Like maybe a wrestler would do better in, you know, a fight to win or something where they're more aggressive versus like an EBI format where it really doesn't matter. It's just going to,
Yeah, I would.
you know,
think,
I don't know. I'm
See,
just
I think
curious.
like things like it depends on how they utilize their body, right?
Right,
Their
right.
game, because really that's what it comes down to. You know, with the fight to wins are more generally geared towards submission. So submissions are worth more than aggression.
Okay.
You know, so if you get submission, that's the way the rules are set. So basically, submission attempts are worth more
Gotcha.
than just.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you could be controlling position, but if the person's got you fighting out of stuff, they're going to give it to that person.
Gotcha.
Generally, not always, because there's been some calls where I'm like, that was kind of questionable, like
Sure.
you know, because that guy actually had a submission attempt. Then there was other times where other competitions like ADCC definitely favors takedown artists, because you know you either have to be willing to go for the takedown, or you've got to be willing to be very aggressive off your back if you have to be, because you know there's the first half is no points, but the second half is points, but it's a negative if you pull guard. So you get a negative point if you pull guard.
Right.
So you better be ready to go, or you've got to pull guard before the time, or you've got to have good takedowns. And you typically see, if you watch the ADCC, you'll see a lot of takedown battles. You know, where guys don't sit back; they fight those takedown battles because of the point scheme.
Yeah.
And so again, you know, it just depends. And you know, even with the EBI, you see sometimes where, you know, people will play a certain game and they'll play till they get to the overtime,
Right.
And that's when they'll come alive. So it really depends.
Yeah. It feeds a certain, you know, the rule set's going to dictate the style that people are going to play.
Right.
Because if they know, like, hey, if I have somebody's back, I'm unstoppable.
Yeah.
They're going to just say, look, I'm not going to risk it. And most people at that level that are competing at those high level tournaments are going to have a good enough game that if they want to stall, they can, for the most part.
But I think that it also just depends on the person's, like, their ability to execute their game, because really when you're competing, you have to kind of think to yourself, okay, here's what I do best, here's what I have on the table, how do I make this suit the rules the best way?
Right.
You know, again, unless you're going for a submission, where then it's just like you're just going for the kill. But if you're trying to win, you know, and be able to play the system, then you got to think about, well, how does my game work? What do I do best, and how can I utilize my game and a strategy that works with the rules that I'm subjected to?
For sure. Yeah, that's great. And that's part of the beauty of jiu-jitsu is, man, you can compete in gi if you only like gi. You can do no gi if that's what suits you or you do better at.
And you got age groups.
Age groups.
I mean, that's the thing,
weight,
too.
yeah.
Like, so the age group things is huge, because, again, you know, a lot of people, I don't think they appreciate this. A lot of other sports don't have age groups like that. You can't just, like, not as readily available. You know, you don't have, like, a tournament every weekend where you can be a 45-year-old man or woman who, I can go roll with these. I can go compete.
Yeah.
I can go win. They even have, like, you know, like the Masters World Championships, you know,
which are fun.
and for multiple
Crazy.
belt levels. Now, I always consider, you know, the lower belt level world championships are good, but I guess when it comes down to it, in my head, I always think of those as like it's like amateur and pro.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, because again, you could, if you were a purple belt world champion, that's impressive as hell. Blue belt world champion, it's impressive. But once you're a black belt, you know, you're gonna have to like, it's gonna be about what you're doing at black belt. You know what I mean? It's almost like an amateur fighter who becomes pro.
Yeah.
While he's racking up amateur titles, he'll tell people, man, I won this title, win this title, win this title. Here's all the stuff I've won. And then when they get to pro, it's like, yeah, so I just started pro, and I won the, you know, you kind of, you don't want to go back and claim all your amateur stuff, you know, because you're just like, you know.
Well, and I think there's like, if you look at, and I hate to reference golf in any way, shape, or form. Sorry if anybody golfs out there.
I love golf.
But like you have the senior PGA Tour, like that's pretty prestigious from what I understand. A lot of high level, you know, golfers compete in that, and that's for people, I don't know, over 40 or 50, whatever it is. But like that in jiu-jitsu is the Masters division, you know, the Master Worlds, and there's a lot of I'd say a lot of importance and that a lot of validity to somebody like winning a Masters. Like we all competed in 2016, me, you, and Justin, and there was like 47 dudes in my division, like purple belt. I'm like, okay, Master 1 purple belt, 47, and it was way more than that. Like in the following years, I think it was like 70 or something, because I would kind of keep an eye on that. I mean, that's a huge tournament, and those people there are no joke. I mean, you had Lovato. You were one match away from going against Lovato.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too about the black belts and those Master Worlds.
Studs.
At the Masters black belt, you're going against black belts in a lot of cases that have been black belts for a while.
Yeah,
and they're not any technically worse. They've got all kinds of technique. The thing about as you get older, this is the thing that I've realized is that one, I don't recover as fast.
Right.
So, for instance, like the ADCC trials that I did, I really liked having the breaks that we had in between. Because had I gone against some of those, like one of the matches I went into like overtime and barely won, right? I was exhausted after that match. If I had done like a normal IBJJF where I had like 5 minutes and boom, I'm back out, I would have been toast. Yeah. I would have been able to do much of nothing. But I had 45 minutes, almost an hour to rest, get my bearings back, and I felt great. And you know, you just don't recover as fast. Even after the tournament was over, the next day, dude, I felt like I got hit by a truck. You know, and even like, for instance, with Chad, I started to kind of see this when Chad was living here. Chad and me would have these hard training sessions, beating the crap out of each other. The next day, I would say, man, I need a rest. Now, and then he would come back and be like, I'm ready to go today, you know. Now, I'm able to hang with Chad, no problem, but his ability to recover is much better than mine being younger, you know? And you're more resilient to injuries, things of that nature. So as you get older, you lose your step a little bit as far as cardio goes. Even if you're training hard, like your cardio is you're just not the ability to, like, you know, your heart rate variability, all your heart rate and stuff, like, you know, when you measure it, you know, they say your max heart rate goes down.
Yeah.
So your ability to just rev the engine up just kind of comes down a little bit. And so it's just one of those.
Every year.
Yeah.
So it's 220 minus your age is your max heart rate is what they say.
So, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where you just, you know, as you get older, it's just hard to do. But when you go up against these guys in the Masters, there are no like slumps. They're tough dudes. And, you know, the Masters are a little shorter, and, you know, there's this funny thing where you see with the Masters where they don't really care anymore, like, because
just go after.
They just go after it. You know, there's really not as much. I feel like as much like there is jockeying for position, but there's not as much sometimes hesitation.
Yeah,
I think Lovato actually made a joke about this where it was like showing like what the adults do versus
video of him doing it.
Yeah, because all the guys that are doing the Masters now, we all, like, especially the black belts, we all came up like with fighting jiu-jitsu where we're trying to take each other down and get on top and submit each other.
Aggressive.
Yeah, we're not really worried too much about, like, you know, flipping upside down to get to the back. Sometimes it's usually just like because we can't, because our necks are not our necks are going to do that, so we have to just like go forward.
Yeah,
I'm generalizing, of course, but yeah.
The one thing that we'll get to some questions in just a second. The one thing that, you know, I see with jiu-jitsu though, like the older you get, maybe your physicality goes down, but your mental aspect, like your knowledge base, your skill set, your knowledge of jiu-jitsu goes up.
Sure.
So you're still, like, you think of your level, you're still at a high level, because even though physically you can't be as aggressive or maybe not as strong, but you have so much better maybe technique. Not always, but you're better at, like, playing your game or luring someone into your style of game.
You become much more efficient.
Sure, too.
You become much more efficient. You know how your game works, and you know how to do all this stuff, and you become better at executing that sort of stuff.
Awesome. Let's do. We'll do some Q&A. Let's give a shout out to our sponsors. Chewy in your radio voice. I'm kidding.
Shout out to the sponsor. So,
Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web CBD.
So we're gonna get ready to do some Q&A. So we'll do this real fast. CBD. If you guys want to check out some CBD, Charlotte's Web is the CBD that Eugene and I both enjoy. We got them on the sponsor or on the podcast after we used it for a while. I like them because they're third-party tested. I know what's in there. I ended up doing this thing where I was taking different CBD brands, and it felt like sometimes I would take some CBD and I got nothing out of it. Sometimes I'd take it and it felt great. Theirs has been pretty consistent. This is the stuff I use. That's why we brought him on the podcast. By the way, you guys don't even understand because he gets the messages now, and I do too. We get so many people trying to peddle stuff. Anything on the podcast is like something we've at least messed around with, or that we don't. It's not something I feel bad about selling. I'll say it like that. I don't need the money that bad that I have to like jump hoops and try to sell you block games that you can buy on the App Store. That was one of them that I got offered. Anyway, the other one is.
Epic Roll.
Epic Roll. I don't have his shirt on today. I got mine on. But Epic Roll, he's got some cool shirts on. I like his shirts and his gis and stuff like that. Matt makes his own designs. He's sort of a solopreneur making this stuff. He's out in California, I think.
No, he's
where's he at?
Virginia.
Virginia. He's in Virginia?
Yeah, I
he's close.
Oh, he's in Virginia. He needs to come up. Matt, if you're listening.
I need to bring Matt out sometime.
If you're listening. Come down here. Let's try. He did talk about maybe coming down and training.
Yeah, I have to bring him out for a day.
Come down like Santa, Epic Roll Santa, and just throw some shirts at people. And
that's right. But you can check out his stuff at Epic Roll BJJ. And again, he's got some cool designs. I really like them. And you can check out his stuff there. Both of them is the promo code Chewjitsu, and you'll save 15% on the order. Also, I'm just letting you guys know about this because you're on right now. I'm doing a sale today that goes on till. It goes on the end of this week. I'm combining my wrestling for jiu-jitsu. It's like my takedown series for jiu-jitsu along with my get a grip series together for the same price. So it's basically I throw in the get a grip thing for a bonus. So it's 2 of my courses for the price of 1. If you want to take advantage of that, it'll be going on till Saturday. I'll probably do it till Sunday. You can go to jiu-jitsu.net/W4BJJ. Wrestling for BJJ, but just W4BJJ. If you buy the Wrestling for Jiu-Jitsu product, you'll get the Get a Grip series for free. So if you want to take advantage of that, you can look at that, and that'll be going on until Sunday.
Sweet.
Yeah. So and then if you guys have some questions, we'll throw them in there, and we'll start to talk.
I want to give a shout out to Sam Bush. Thanks for your donation.
Oh, I made a donation. Thanks, Sam.
And then Jason Gray. Jason says, watch all your videos, and they are the reason I started training and improved my game. Thanks for all that you do, brother.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Happy to
send us some questions. We're going to look through and see what's going on.
In a world where we look through questions. Let's see here.
I'll start at the top.
We're going to start at the top. You guys can throw some in there. We're going to go for a bit.
Oh, boy, there's a lot
There's
of
a
stuff.
lot of questions. A lot of talking.
You see anything? I'll go through here.
Well, you got to go slower. I can't go that fast.
Here, use my phone.
Okay.
Use my phone, Chewy.
All right, let's see here. I'm going to go through here. Start my way from the bottom.
Yeah, from the bottom?
I'm going to go from the bottom to the top. Let's see here. How do you stay motivated in a gym where everyone is either bigger or better than you? Well, so Team OT, let me ask you a question. Team OT with zeros, why are you unmotivated? So, like, why are you unmotivated rolling with bigger people or better people? That's a question. Just like we were talking about, like with the guy over the blue belt that trains in the mornings with the guy, all the upper belts. He gets his butt kicked. He's the nail, but he shows up every week.
He's a beast.
At 6 a.m. 6 a.m. He's there ready to train. So why do you find yourself unmotivated? So we'll start with that. Shout
out to Dakota, and the dude does not miss a class.
Hung Ek. The Get a Grip series is gi only for the most part. There's some no gi stuff, but for the most part it's gi. The Wrestling for Jiu-Jitsu series is gi and no gi both. Stephen Pierce says, how's the COVID rolling going? Has there been any apprehensive people? So Steve, yes, there have been people that are a bit cautious and they don't really want to come around right now, which I respect 100%, especially people that have, their own reasons. So totally understand. But the people that show up, for the most part, they're ready to go, and so we train. We keep the classes limited right now, so they're not they could get much bigger than what they are, but we keep them relatively limited. But for the most part, if the people are showing up, they're ready to go. But there are some people that are not showing up just because they are apprehensive, which again I totally respect because we're in uncharted waters, brother.
Find your a group. Like we have 6 a.m. classes 2 days a week, small groups, and we're we have kind of the same people coming in consistently, and we get good training in, and everybody just monitors your symptoms and just be respectful of you don't want to come in with a cold or sniffles or whatever anyway. So just be respectful, for your training partners and. Just What's wrong with this guy?
I'm just messing with you. I heard someone say this, and I thought it was funny. It was they were like, having a sniffles or coughing right now is like speaking Arabic in 2001 after like that whole thing.
Oh God.
I mean, it's just like everybody like sees and they freak out. Like it's like I think people forget, like even like people who because right now in where we live in Louisville, we're in the Ohio Valley, and the Ohio Valley is notoriously terrible for allergies. So people are getting allergies and they're getting sniffles, and everybody's worried they got COVID. And I have to remind people, say, hey, listen, just because COVID came around didn't mean all the allergies and the normal illnesses took a break, right? They didn't say, hey, you got this. All right, man, we're going to leave everything alone. Like they're still there, and you're going to have these same problems that you always have. Now you got this too. So just, you're not dying every time you get like a little cough or some sniffles or sinus pressure or something.
Cheery, I've got a quick question.
Sure,
from here. Let me move over because I can't see. Raphael Posh says, I wanted to start Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, but there are no schools in my country, but we do have a regular BJJ school. Is there a grave difference between the two? Thanks for helping. I don't know how much of this you know. I don't really know. I think maybe it's curriculum, possibly, but I really do not know.
So, I don't know a ton about the way that the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu gyms go about it. So, again, I can tell you only secondhand experience that I know from other people. We have several students in my gym who have come from Gracie Jiu-Jitsu gyms. There is a difference. A lot of times, like he's saying, there's a curriculum, and if I'm correct, basically, like the way that at least, I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but like one of my students who came, they told me that they had to go through like several, like they had to go through all the different stuff, and they had to test out for it was like a blue and white belt or something, and then they were able to roll. So they didn't get to roll for, I think it was like 6 or 7 months, maybe longer before training, which could be a good thing, I suppose. But, they probably do a little bit more self-defense focus, opposed to your average jiu-jitsu gym will probably have some self-defense focus, but generally focused on rolling and training and things of that nature. If all you can do is Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it's better than nothing, bro. You're still going to be learning something, and if you ever have a Gracie gym come around, if you're good at Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it won't take that much of a difference to focus on, or it won't take that much of a it won't be that much of a stretch to simply start to turn around and focus on some of the self-defense or maybe some of the technique variations that they train. So that would be my words to you.
True about that one right there. From Whiplasher 2. Can you see that one?
Yeah. So ex-wrestler from Whiplasher 2. Ex-wrestler, no-gi 9 months, and sometimes in side control. Their arms are so tight to their body, I can't isolate an arm. Any advice? What do you do if an opponent blocks you with their legs to get to mount? Okay, well, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Let's talk about the arms.
Yeah, I thought the arms was the main thing I saw.
When their arms are tight to their body, can't isolate arms. So basically what he's talking about is if you're in a position that you just, the arms come tight, which is good. That's what they're supposed to do. I have kind of an idea that the arms are like buddies. So when the arms are far apart, bad things happen because they're not together, right? If you were walking down a dark alleyway, you'd want to have your buddy next to you just in case. Watch your back. It's the same thing with your arms. When your arms are separated, it's in a bad spot. And so it's a good thing that they keep their arms tight. So here's what I typically tell people to do. If you're having trouble isolating an arm, do something else. Attack the neck, maybe go knee on belly. Do things to create openings. So for instance, I'm going for an arm bar right now. Like I've been training this arm bar for like 3 weeks straight. I'm going for the same arm bar. And it's tricky because all my students are starting to know what I'm going for. So now I have to set it up in different ways. And I kind of have this sort of general idea that anytime I want to go for the arm, I attack the neck. If I want to attack the neck, I go for the arm. It's kind of a neck and arm sort of principle because if I attack their neck, they have to come up to defend, which typically opens up their arm. If I attack their arms go down, which opens up the neck. And so I would encourage you to sort of look towards other submission options or other options like neck attacks or maybe some pressure on knee on belly or something like that where you can elicit a response from the person and then isolate the arm afterwards.
That's good. Pull up your phone. I can't see.
Yeah, let me pull up my phone.
I'm like such an old person.
Back in my day, I could see the computer.
Chewy, question. I don't know. I just saw it, but this was like some of the first moves that I learned, as a white belt, basically from guard was was a scissor sweep. And so there's a question about a scissor sweep when it's very predictable.
Yeah.
And so I'll kind of give my take on it if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just
I do mind.
well. So my thing is this. The scissor sweep is a predictable move because people can kind of tell you're setting it up, but use it to set up other moves. Use it to set up other, for example, triangle chokes are there. You can do different things. I mean, there's so much variation. So like use the scissor sweep as your number one, but then have a number two, number three variation because you're trying to off balance them. You can use that momentum as they come back into you to set something else up. So that's my opinion on how to make the scissor sweep more effective because you can always go to the scissor sweep, go to maybe a triangle setup or if you want, but then you can go back to a scissor sweep from the other side or something.
Yeah, so like the scissor sweep, that's a fundamental movement of jiu-jitsu. And even if you don't, like I was teaching it to some brand new people recently, even if you don't use it for the sweep itself, that hip turning motion is essential for guard opening. So even if it doesn't work, you have a bunch of different options. You could switch to different guard positions and everything else. One of the things I would say is if you're trying to make something work, don't give yourself an option. There's a beauty in basically telling yourself you don't have a choice. I think the idea that they use in like self-development books is like burn the bridge, right? So here's an example. There was a time where I was trying to use the flower sweep, okay? And I'd seen people use the flower sweep, and I was bound and determined to make this damn sweep work. I was like, I see people using it all the time. I can't use it to save my life. I want to make it work because it seems effective. So I just basically said for at least a month, I'm not going to be using anything else other than a flower sweep. So if I'm going to sweep someone, I have to do it with this one. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit there on my back. And it was interesting because a couple weeks into it, all of a sudden I'm sweeping the hell out of people from flower sweep. And I would do it because, like you said, it was kind of predictable. I wasn't very quick with it. So what I started doing is I would literally lay on my back. I would have a really loose grip on the pant, loose grip on the sleeve, and I would just lay there, look like I was dead. I'm like, I would try to literally play possum and look like I was tired. And then as soon as they would start to go to break the guard, I would like, boom, execute it. I still do it to this day. We had a guy come in last night named Robert, and he did the same thing. Like I laid down like I was, I'm breathing heavy because we had our hard training session. So I'm just laying down like I'm done. As soon as he started bringing his legs into path, boom, swept him. And afterwards he's like, what are you doing? And I was showing him. And so again, when you limit yourself, you have to find new ways to do things. It's like the armbar that I've been hitting. One of the ways I hit it is I started from back because everybody, as soon as I get to side control north-south, they're balling up.
Right.
So I can't get the damn arm split. So what I did was I went to the back and I started attacking the neck. And as I let them escape, I got the arm and then set it up. And then I went for the back or went for the arm bar again and got it. So basically I'm setting up a completely different way because I'm trying to like get you thinking about something else. But that's happening because I'm limiting myself. I give myself no choice. So again, sometimes with those moves, there's other things that you can do. You can add on to them. Like a scissor sweep is a great position, like Eugene's saying. There is so many things that you can tap into from that position because you're literally at a crossroads for open guard. You can go to spider guard, butterfly guard, half guard, whatever you want to do if the scissor sweep doesn't work. But if you were like dead determined to make the scissor sweep work, don't give yourself a choice for like a month and watch what happens if you're using it. You're going to find some way to make it work because if you don't have a choice, you can't go, well, I just can't do this. If you're like, I'm going to figure this out or I have to, it's a different perspective.
Yeah. Chewy, I think you have some experience with this specific. There's a question right there is highlighted if you can see it. I think we both I had a guy from in Indiana where I compete against in the ego that he beat the brakes off me a couple times. He actually won Master Worlds, so I don't feel too bad. Super nice guy, and going in against somebody like that I've lost to numerous times was, you should try to play your game. So this question, sorry, I prefaced it, but
yeah,
you want to read that question?
So we got from Lost in Samui? Samuel? I don't know. Anyway, love your content, man. Question. In 2 weeks, I'll be competing against a guy who already beat me some months ago, 15-0. What would your mindset be going into this? Well, you have nothing to lose. So if you got smoked 15-0, right? That means that person, they put it on you pretty well. That's not like that's not like an easy win. That means like you didn't really get much going. Okay, so that can be a beautiful thing because I know that for me, like a lot of times I've been in several situations over the years where whether I was rolling or competing, I would go against guys who had beat me or who I expected to beat me. And then I would step out on the mat and I would be free. There would be free from expectation. There is no expectation to win. I don't care, like, because I know I'm supposed to lose to this person. And what that does is when you don't have such a focus on the end result, you have a clear mind. You can be in the present because you're not thinking about, well, what happens if I don't get to the podium? What happens if I do this? You go into it thinking, I'm supposed to lose, so I'm going to give this person hell. I lost 15-0. Let's get some points on the board this time. That would be my advice to you, because there's a beautiful thing where this has happened over and over again, and this is honestly the mindset that I have when I compete now. And it's so funny because when I adopted this mindset years ago, my competition record went way up because I was free, right? Because a lot of times when people compete, they're so focused on winning and losing and the end result and whether I'm going to let someone down and blah, 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 all this stuff, instead of just, you got to hit your techniques to do this thing. That's the only thing that matters. Any of the end result stuff that you want only comes as a byproduct of you being aggressive to hit your techniques. That's it. So what I would say to you is say, yeah, the person beat me. They schooled me last time. Technically, I probably, am not going to win this. So you know what? I'm just going to go out there and give them hell. Let's see what happens. And be aggressive to hit your techniques and don't worry about the end result, because if you lose, great. You lost again, no biggie. But if you win, that's something special, right? You came back and you beat a person that beat you, and then you came back and beat them. Now, I'll tell you this. I've been schooled by people like that and then came back later on and beat them and that kind of thing. So it can happen. It's not out of the question of possibility. But I think your mindset is going to have to be something where you could either walk into that match going, oh, geez, he beat me last time, and I'm going to lose again now. Oh, golly, I just want to win this match. Or you can say, you know what? This person beat me last time. I'm coming after him this time. I have nothing to lose. My back's against the corner. The only way I can do is go forward. I got beat 15-0 goose egg. I didn't put a single point on the board. So if I put a point on the board, that's an improvement, right? If I do anything like that, that's an improvement. So you have nothing to lose. So go out there and attack that person 100%. Go for your techniques. Be focused solely on the present rather than worrying about winning and losing and what happened in the past, how much they beat you. But it doesn't matter. You're in the moment with a person, and you're trying to hit them with your techniques. So that's my my advice to you, brother.
All right, great, Chewy. Guys, send us some questions. And go ahead. You got one?
Yeah. Well, here's one. It has nothing to do with this, but he asked this in another one of my videos recently. It says, Chewy, can you tell us about businesses trying to be extorted in Louisville? Has your business being threatened? Just with all the protests and stuff and the riots. Where we're at, no. Most of the, I guess you'd say, like a lot of the protests and the riots that have happened in Louisville have been downtown, which most of the businesses aren't there. So it's mostly downtown, which it's crazy. It's like you got boarded up windows everywhere and stuff.
Been down. Yeah. So that's kind of like the west end of Louisville, I would say, and we're kind of the south end, right?
I mean, not necessarily, because you look at some of the places in downtown where they've got boarded up. It's not just the west end.
Yeah.
But no. So no, we haven't been threatened. I don't. Man, I don't know anything about. I know about it, but I don't know enough about it to give you like a factual 100%. And I'm not going to spout off something unless I can tell you 100%, because there's too much misinformation going around anyway with all that stuff. So I'm not going to be another contributor, but I can just tell you that my business has not been threatened. So
people know who Chewy is. They know what's up. Don't be bringing that.
Don't say that. Don't say that shit. No, they don't give a shit about who I am.
Yeah, they do, man. You
stop it.
I think you have a lot of respect.
Well, I have respect, yeah. But people that no, I'm not going there.
All right.
So
what about smaller grapplers? There was a question about smaller grapplers. Like, what advice? General advice?
I don't know. What kind of question do you have?
They just said general advice for smaller grapplers. I would say just, work
train.
On off balancing people. I don't know.
So here's the thing. People want to make these distinctions about things: bigger, smaller, this, that. I've got short arms. I've got long arms. Look, here's the thing. In each one of us, you have an opportunity and you have like a disadvantage. You have positives and negatives to every body type, right? So for instance, me, I've got short arms. I've got a big chest, big torso. My arms are short. But this sort of means I can't do things like arm triangle chokes very well. I can do them a little bit. I can't do anacondas. I can't do darces very well, but I can Kimura the hell out of someone. I can straight arm lock someone. I can do all those things. When I get an arm bar, I'm tight and snug around the thing. So there's some benefits to it. Most small people look at their small thing as it's some sort of disadvantage. Oh, I'm so small and I'm up against these big. Yeah, you have some disadvantages, but if you learn how to use your body type, you have some advantages in there as well. Here's the thing, though. I can't figure those out for you. You have to figure those out. Every one of us, we can give each other help and we can help each other out along the way. But we can only be a guide so that you can figure out your own path, right? The idea to me is we kind of get you going in the forest. We're on the trail, but eventually you're going to have to go off the trail and go in your own way. You can't go down whatever trail that you see on that road. That's someone else's trail. You got to kind of go down your own one. And so again, with everybody's body type, a lot of people will look at it and say, man, I have short legs, man, my guard sucks. So play half guard. Like you can play something else. If you're shorter, like I can tell you that some of the most frustrating roles that I've ever had have been with smaller people where they just know how to not allow themselves to get smashed. They know how to keep moving, and they wear my butt out. And I've seen this where smaller guys know how to use the positions to wear out the bigger, stronger opponents. And so again, I mean, there's disadvantages and advantages to everything. What I would encourage you to do is not really pass a judgment on it. And I don't know that you are, but I'm just kind of going off this because you said smaller grapplers. Everybody has the same thing. Every one of you listening to this that trains, you have this ability to develop your game, and again, your game is going to be based upon your athleticism, your strength, your speed, your flexibility, your body type, all this stuff. Figure out what that is. And again, the way that comes from is from training and experimenting and stuff like that. But I would encourage any of you guys listening, do not look at your whatever gifts or disadvantages you think you might have. Don't necessarily look at it that way, because there's a way to make it work, but you got to figure it out. And again, it's not something that I can tell you, because not all small grapplers are going to have the same problems that other people are, because everybody's slightly different. I mean, because you could be a quote smaller grappler, but you could be jacked as hell, and the way that you're going to do jiu-jitsu might be different from a person who's smaller and very thin. But again, I've had so many small grapplers over the years come into the gym and excel very well and do great. So I think it just comes down to you putting that time in there. And the only thing I will say is that with smaller grapplers, there tends to be a bit longer, more of a steeper learning curve, because you're going to have to learn how to deal with physical strength, which is tough, and that'll take a little while. So you'll have to be able to be willing to put those lumps in early, but later on there's a cool reward on the end of it, because then you're going to be that guy or that woman who's out there competing and rolling, and you're able to tie up the bigger, stronger person into a knot, and that's the coolest thing in grappling, because it's like, whoa, that person weighs 130 pounds, and he just beat the brakes off of that person that weighs 185 pounds. I remember one of my cousins came to the gym years ago, and he's about 215 pounds at the time. All of the men on my mother's side are big guys. They're all big. Like my uncle's like all of my uncles and my grandfather, they're all like 6'4" and up. And he's like 6'3". He's tall, big kid, big strong kid, lifts weights. And I told him to roll with one of my guys who's a 135 pound, multiple time Pan Am champion at different belts and stuff. I was like, go roll with him, and if he doesn't submit you, whatever, And he looked at me, he goes, no, Nicholas, I don't want to hurt him. I was like, no, just go ahead and see what happens. And that 130 pound guy, just wore him out, man. And it was so funny because he came off the mat like, whoa, that was crazy. I've never been roughed up by a 135 pound person. So again, it's different for every person, but once you figure that out, it's a really cool skill. So I encourage you to keep going, but again, make sure that you don't look at it as just a negative thing or look at it as a disadvantage. There's advantages that are inherently in there that maybe you haven't figured out yet. And the last thing I'll say about it is also, it's not something that I can just tell you. It's something your body has to figure out, because a lot of jiu-jitsu is not based upon intellectual knowledge. You can know something all day long, but until your body has it hardwired into the nervous system, until you just have this intuitive sense of what you're doing, which takes time from experience, drilling, rolling, things of that nature, it really just it doesn't mean as much. You can know that it exists, which is helpful because you see it. You can start to see it when you're rolling. But until you hardwire that stuff into the nervous system, it's not something that's super usable during a hard roll or competition or whatever it might be. So
I think Justin, who is that you're referring to, by the way, Justin?
Yeah, it was Justin.
Yeah, so Justin is, for First of all, he's phenomenal. I mean, a Pan Am champion. The one advantage that I think, when you're constantly rolling against people that are bigger than you, and Justin's pretty strong, but sometimes stronger than you, when you roll against somebody your own size, like it's just like it's going to be such an easier time. I think because you almost like you're training with these people that are just so much bigger and harder to handle if you're a smaller size. When you got somebody that's kind of the same size and weight, I think it's like you're going to feel like you can kind of ragdoll them.
Sure. I mean, it just is what it is, man. Everybody's got different challenges,
Yeah, and you got to figure it out what works for your body, for sure.
I mean, because I've heard so many big guys like complain, like, how do I deal with these little small guys? They keep moving. I get tired.
Right.
So it's like, then I'll hear the small
Always
guys go,
moving.
God, these big guys are so big. How do I just get them off me? So it's, again, it's one of these things where, both sides, there's inherent advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, there was a guy that mentioned, I believe it was a guy, I'm not sure. It said Aaron. Aaron said that he's a blue belt, or he's now a blue belt, but he was very successful at a white belt and won a lot of golds. But now he's a little nervous about competing at blue belt because he had so much success. So he thinks like the skill level is going to be
been set,
kind of like having a bigger target on your back. Now, you're not just like you're kind of hunting people. People are hunting you as well. So, I mean, I don't know. I think you just do it. It's really just a belt. I think if your instructor has trust in you to be a blue belt or be promoted, then you're probably there.
Yeah. Well, you're setting expectations. Like you're thinking because, I did all these other tournaments, so I should I should continue to be successful, right? That's a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
Because it's going to screw you up. Because if you start to set a bar a certain place and you think that every time you do something, it's supposed to be where that last bar was, you're going to be let down because you'll have these ups and downs. You'll have great performances sometimes, and sometimes you won't. And that's just part of competing. That's a part of doing anything where you put yourself out there. There's so many things that I've done where, again, you get attached to this this result that you get.
Yeah.
This has happened with competing. I was the same way. I was a white belt that was kicking butt. And I remember being so nervous about my first blue belt competition because I was like, what if I don't win? What if I do blah, 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 blah? And it really messed with me. And I remember I lost my first blue belt match because I was so nervous that I was hamstrung. And it was, now luckily I was able to do like a second division later on that day. And I was able to shake it off and just compete. But kind of going back to what Eugene said too, if your coach put that trust in you, trust that. They put you at a certain belt. They trust that you're there, and it's not as big of a jump as you think it is. There's going to be some killers in the blue belt division. There always are, but at the same time, there's going to be some guys just like you who just got their blue belt or got it recently. And again, when you roll in the gym, I'm sure you probably do fine with other blue belts.
Yeah.
So again, if you're doing fine with the other blue belts, then who cares? It's all right. It's not a big deal. It's like when people they get freaked out about like should I I'm 185 pounds. Should I cut weight and go down to 175, or should I just compete at the 190-pound weight class? Like, how many times in a jiu-jitsu roll session do you actually compete against someone of the same weight anyway?
Yeah.
There's always a big difference in weight. So again, unless you're competing for some big money or something like that, I'd just say compete at the weight that you feel comfortable at. It's usually probably not going to make that big of a difference for you. Sometimes it can, but most of the time, if it's just a small weight difference, it's not a big deal. But going back to the blue belt, don't put expectations on yourself, bro. Like, you got to let that stuff go. Like, you can't worry about, like, I did this as a white belt. You're a blue belt now. So now it's like a clean slate. Now we're doing it again. And trust your coach. They put you at that level. You're there for a reason. And just go see what happens. And then, you can start to see where you're at a blue belt level that way.
All right. Let me see if there's any others. All right. Chewy, I don't know if this is the best question. So somebody, I'll ask you this one. Did you have? I don't think you ever really lost a lot of tournaments. You kind of did you have a lot of losses initially, and then you started winning, or
in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
No, so
you had it in wrestling though, right?
Well, I had two what I would call two big dips in grappling. The first, what's the question?
Yeah, the question is, I'll read it real fast. It's from Mr. Blue.
Mr. Blue.
I started BJJ pretty late, 35. I train 5 to 7 times a week, eat well, work out on the side. I love competing, but I keep losing more than 10 matches in a row. When did you start winning and why?
Okay. So when I first started grappling, so I'll kind of go back to that. Like, when I first started grappling, I was doing wrestling, right? And so I remember my first 2 years in wrestling, I didn't do very well. My first year, I won one, lost one, then I got hurt, and then I was out for the whole season. Came back the next year, spent that season basically scrapping to, win 1 out of 4 matches. I'd win one, or I'd win 1 and lose 3. And I mean, it was rough, and I would lose lots of matches.
Was that at like one tournament? Like you'd get multiple matches, right? Or is it like once you lose? Like as far as
it depends on the situation. So wrestling tournaments were typically double elimination.
Gotcha.
So I might win 1 and lose 2, whatever it was. But again, I'm just saying, just in general, out of a wrestling season, I'd win 1, maybe lose 2 to 3 matches, and then in jiu-jitsu, I was winning right out of the gate. I was winning lots of tournaments. I still lost some here and there, but I was winning pretty well. I would typically place in every tournament that I went to as a white belt. As a purple belt, that was where I really experienced a real bad issue because for different reasons. But basically, during purple belt, I would have these stretches where I would like lose multiple competitions in a row. Which might be only 1 match each, but again, you paid the tournament fees, you did the trip and everything else, and you put all this into it, and boom, lose. And so I lost those tournaments, and I had to figure myself out a little bit and see what I was doing. In regards to you've lost all those matches, trained 5 to 7 times a week. There's so many things that you get into, but you're looking for something because you said, when did you start winning and why? I started winning in wrestling, and that came about just because I was, I just was getting more comfortable with competition. In jiu-jitsu, I experienced that dip, but I came back, and it was just because my jiu-jitsu got better. I mean, there really is no way to kind of get around it. It's a weird thing where competing itself is sort of a subset skill of jiu-jitsu. Like I've seen this happen plenty of times where I've had people where they're amazing in the gym, and when they compete, they're meh, they do okay. And it's not because they don't have the skill, it's because their ability to execute, their ability to translate the person who they are in the gym into the highly stressful situation of competition is just not there yet. And that's different for everyone. You're 35 years old. I wonder if you're competing against like 20-year-olds. That can be a big factor. People don't think it's a big deal, but I tell you right now, man, I've had a couple of times where I've had guys that are in their 40s and stuff like that, and I'll tell them, do the master division. And they'll say, I'm doing the adults. And like, you can say that, man, but 18 years old is different than 40 years old or 35, whatever, especially if you're newer to this stuff. But I would also just sort of take a look and see how you're losing. So if you've lost 10 matches, you have tons of lessons inside those matches. You should have a clear reason as to like, why did I lose that one? Why did I lose that one? And if you start to see a trend, that's a big thing. If you start to see a trend in your matches, then you have something to work on. For instance, I used to lose matches very often from triangle chokes. That was like one of my kryptonite moves. And so my coach made me basically start all of my matches for a month after showing me some escapes from triangle chokes. And so I had to get better at the position. And so what I would do for you, or what I would tell you, is instead of worrying about what I did and everything else, I would encourage you to go back and look at your matches and figure out, okay, I lost 10 in a row. How did you lose those 10? What are you missing? What are the mistakes you made? Maybe even you could even ask your coach to, like, if you have the video, you could ask your coach to sit down with you, maybe do a private lesson where you guys just watch the matches and come up with some ideas. But even if you have to just go off on memory, think about like, okay, how did I lose that match? What happened? Was I nervous? Were my takedowns just crappy and I couldn't get one? What was it? And then start to focus on those areas that are weak, because that's one of the best lessons tournaments have to give you is when you get out there, you're in this super hyper stressful situation where a lot of times the areas of your game that are lacking, they show very like clear as day when you're out there competing, because these people are going to expose certain weaknesses that your game have, and so they bring them right up to the surface there. And inside of that lesson there, you have something to improve upon. And so that would be my advice for getting over that slump that you're at, is you got to go back and look at what your mistakes are so that you can improve on those. Because that was something that I really struggled with for a long time doing, and that was something that held me back for a long time.
Yeah. I think one thing you talk about is expectations too. I mean, just don't have expectations. Just try to play your game. I try to control what I do. I can't worry about what the other person does. I do have sometimes a good amount of nerves before competition. Part of it's because I don't compete enough. So when I do compete, it's like I'm going against at brown belt. You're going against people that are competing very regularly. I don't get to compete as often, and I feel like it takes me longer to get comfortable. Like I need a couple matches. Sometimes you don't get that. Like I need like a match or two to get like kind of, just get the jitters out, so to speak. So But I try to keep myself calm by just like having a game plan in my head and just knowing like this is what I'm going for. Here's my plan A, plan B, plan C, and just whatever happens, happens.
The only reason I bring up the watching, going back to your matches, is because that was something I struggled with.
Yeah.
Like early on, I was making all these mistakes, and I remember my coach would always hand us the VHS tapes of our matches. I didn't want to watch my losses. I would watch my wins over and over and over again and feel good about them. But my losses, I didn't want to like. I didn't like watching them. The only problem is those were the things I should have been watching, because that was where I could have got better. Like it was clear as day. Hey, this is how you keep losing to this position. You need to fix this. I put it off for like 2-3 years, and so that's what I'm saying. Go back to those losses and start to look at them and examine them with a magnifying glass, fine tooth comb, and figure out, what am I doing in these matches that is causing me to lose, and figure that stuff out. And again, it could be a myriad of different things, but again, you got to come up with solutions to those problems. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, and at that point, you have enough experience too. There's enough, like, you've got 10 matches to pull from. Like, there should be enough, like, there should be some repeating things going on in there. Like, at least some kind of consistency or some kind of pattern, hopefully. All right. Chew, you got anything else?
I'm looking. Probably answer a couple more, and then we'll be ready to rock and roll out of here.
For sure. All right. That's maybe a coach question.
The solid curriculum one?
Yeah.
Had one here. So from Iron Horse says, do you have any advice on developing a solid curriculum? Yeah. So a curriculum is simply just a collection of techniques and everything that you want to become sort of standardized within your gym. So if you want to have a curriculum and you want it to be sort of thought out, my curriculum's a little loose, because I don't want to be too strict. Jiu-jitsu, it's always changing. So there's some parts that are like static, and the other parts are kind of loose. But think about, what is the end result that you want? Think of that first. What do I want my students to have? And then work your way back, right? So if you say, I want my students to be able to do these things, to accomplish these things, to be prepared for these positions, etc., then you just go backwards and say, what do they need to know in order to make those things happen? And then you develop your curriculum from there. Simple as that. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. You're basically you're thinking about yourself. If you're a coach, how do I guide this person from here to here to here and get them to this point? So you got to think about what the end result that you'd like to deliver to your student, and how do you give them to that? Think of it if you were selling someone like a product of some sort that has nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. You say, well, I have this really cool thing that can help people. How can I get them to get the benefits of it? So you're thinking, as a jiu-jitsu person, I have the ability to empower this person with, these things, these X, whatever these things are that you want to give to them. How can you get them to that point? Start by just sort of working backwards into it.
What about teaching here? This has been a recurrent one. Fusions. No, that's not the one we were looking at. Fursger 44. He says, I'm a blue belt teaching my significant other during COVID-19. It's going better than I ever thought it would be. Just having fun, but my problem is that I've run out of techniques I feel comfortable teaching.
So I did a video on this, actually, because there was a girl sent in a question, very similar question, with her and the guy that she's dating. So what I would say is, first off, you have an endless treasure trove of techniques at your disposal, with YouTube, with streaming videos, things of that nature. One of the things that I mentioned in the video is that, if you come to a point where there's not a whole lot you can teach, first off, you could always revisit the stuff you've taught. That's not a bad thing, right? But what you could do is you could go and start to learn new stuff, right? So think about it this way. Let's say you and your lady are training, and you guys worked on scissor sweep. We'll go back to scissor sweep. We used that earlier. Well, they learned scissor sweep. Great. Well, what's a variation they could do off scissor sweep? You look at, get on YouTube, and you find this scissor sweep opening to a triangle choke. Ooh, that's neat. I've never done it before, but it looks cool. Great. Watch the video and then work it out with her. So, all right, I'm going to try this out, and we're going to watch the video, and then I'm going to try this out, and we'll work on it together. Instead of it being like when me and my buddy Chris, when we used to live together, when we would do techniques, we were both white belts, so we would watch instructionals, and we would not go at it as if I'm teaching him or he's teaching me. We would just be like, let's figure this thing out together, and we would try it and figure stuff out, and then we would go use it later on and realize it worked in rolling in the gym. So much so that one time my coach, he said, "You've been watching those instructionals, haven't you?" And couldn't help but just grin. Yep. So what maybe you could do is get a hold of some instructional series or just some videos on YouTube. And then when you get a hold of them, instead of thinking about you teaching her, think about it as you simply working with her to figure them out, right? So you could do it for yourself too. You could think about moves you want to learn and she could just kind of be along for the ride. Or you could think about just expanding on the positions you've already taught her and just working on them together and doing it as kind of that kind of thing. Rather than you teaching her, you're saying, listen, I know more than you, so I'm going to sort of guide you through this because I'll know at least some of the things that are going on better than you do. And we'll work on it together, that kind of thing. So that would be my advice on it.
Yeah. And like you said, linking things together. So go based on positions or techniques you already worked on, chain things off of that. So you don't have to relearn a whole new thing. You're just kind of adding more layers to your game, which I think is very useful. It's something you for yourself. I mean, maybe even if you have a certain type of game that you like to play, that you can base it off of that because you maybe have more knowledge of that specific position, and then you're learning stuff and they're learning stuff, and you're going to be further along regardless.
That's right. Here's one. This is fun. Brian of the North. I'm going to be going to my 5th jiu-jitsu class in a couple hours. You guys helped me to get past the fear of starting at 11. Oh, I thought he was having trouble with the fear of starting. Oh, never mind. Go get it, Brian of the North. I thought you were you were afraid of the fear of starting. But
so if somebody does have a fear of starting, what do you tell them?
You're supposed to have fear.
Well, overcoming that fear. If that fear is greater,
change your thinking of fear. Like, so see, people don't understand. They think that the feeling that they have is fear. It's not fear. You have an arousal going on in your body. Your body's getting like, oh man, we're getting ready to do something.
Yeah,
that's excitement. Like when you listen to Olympic athletes talk, the person always goes, and did you feel afraid before your performance? And they're always like, yeah, I was excited. You're always excited. It's like your body's ready to go. That's the difference. So if you look at it as if you're afraid, well, then you're afraid. But you look at the way that you can sort of think about it, your body's just getting ready to do something crazy. So it's getting ready. It's getting amped up. It's getting ready to go. I mean, I remember I used to drive to the gym with butterflies in my stomach.
Yeah,
I used to be nervous.
All the time. Yeah.
I was nervous forever. And then I remember I started getting into MMA fighting. And I remember then we would have those days where we'd get the text message, hey, we're gonna have a hard training session today. You're think, oh no, that means we're gonna be sparring. We're gonna do this terrible conditioning stuff. It's just gonna be a big mess of suck. And so again, there's you can look it up. There's I forgot the name of it. I wrote about it in the vault. There's in my membership for my website. They have a name for it, but it's basically it's like anxiety, but it's an excited arousal that comes with when you're getting ready to do some sort of performance. And again, it's one of those things where, again, just like stress, your body's really not good at differentiating the two. If the stress is real or perceived or wherever it's just stress, right? So it's the same thing with the excitement that you get. You get this nervousness and excitement. The nervousness that you get from fear of something versus the nervousness of I'm getting ready to perform. There really isn't a whole lot of difference in the way that it feels, but there is something that's positive about that anxiety before a performance, because I've been in situations where I didn't have that when I needed it, say when I was getting ready to compete or something, and I bombed. But then when I'm competing and I have it, I perform better. It's like there's this, you learn how to harness it. It's a type of energy, and when you learn how to harness it, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, so you're don't feel like it almost keeps you a little sharp.
Yeah,
so you're not flat. You don't feel flat going in.
Yeah, so I'm
supposed to be a little bit amped up for this,
and I look at it as a good thing. So when I go to a tournament, my belly's kind of you can just kind of feel that in your gut. I'm like, oh, there it is. It's my old buddy again, right? Because it's that same feeling has been coming back since I was. With the exception of one tournament where I got destroyed, I've had the same feeling for every fight, every competition, everything since I was a teenager, and it's still there. So it's my old friend, the performance jitters, But it's good because I notice that when I have those and I welcome them, and instead of trying to make some sort of value judgment of myself, oh, why am I so afraid of this? I just want them to go away, and I want don't. They're good for you. Mm-hmm. You're there. Your body's going to perform better because you have them. Because your body's going to tap into a level of energy and a level of performance that if you learn how to harness it, that's not able to normally. So again, there's something. It's just like this. Imagine that you're running, and someone says, "I want you to run as fast as you can and go." Right? All right. So you run. Now imagine they've got a pack of wild, friggin' ferocious dogs with their teeth just going drool, snarling, and you know they're going to bite you, and they say, all right, run. Which one you think you're going to run faster at? Right? You know, because you're nervous. You got this anxiety. Oh, crap, I got to go because there's something on the line here. Right, so you're going to run faster. You're going to tap into something, and so your body has that different level that it can tap into as far as what's available. So it's the same way. So if you're getting ready to do something, there's something on the line. You are going to be a little bit more nervous, but it allows you to tap into something inside of your body that's not present when you're just kind of I'm just going to do this thing. You know, when it's nice and relaxed and everything else.
Yeah, I think harnessing it's a challenge at times, and for me, putting myself in an environment that evokes those emotions or those feelings, I think it's good. So competing more, or even like we do, one thing I think that we've done that's been very helpful is like a tournament type training where we actually, you partner people up and you start from the feet and you got points, and even sometimes we have a ref and you've got people kind of giving you advice and like cheering you on or whatever. I think it really, that evokes, it's not the same because it's like, oh, I've trained with this person before. It's not exactly the same, but it gives you you tap into that a little bit, and because you're like, all right, everybody's watching now, and we're keeping score this time. It's not like we're just rolling and doing stuff. We're actually keeping score, which I think can be very helpful for sure. For me, it has been. So
yeah, so it's the same way. Exactly right.
Tap into it.
I think really the problem is that people make a judgment on it. That's the problem. It's like because you think it's a bad thing.
Yeah,
it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's good that you have it, but people think of it as a bad thing because it doesn't feel comfortable. Because we associate comfort with good, and sometimes like other feelings is bad. The comfort's fine, but like it's just like training. Training is kind of brutal sometimes. It's stressful, and it's it's not a bad thing. You go through some of those training sessions, and they absolutely suck the whole time, and you're getting beat down and you're exhausted. But man, you feel so damn good afterwards. You feel accomplished afterwards. There is a delayed sort of satisfaction from it, and so I think that anytime we run into something where I feel uncomfortable, uncomfortable's not bad. It can be bad because there can be uncomfortable situations that aren't a positive thing, but there are uncomfortable situations that are very good for you. And typically it's the ones where you sort of put yourself there, like a competition. You signed up for it. When you go for the gym, you sign up for this stuff because you want something that's there. Those are generally the ones where, this is good for you. This is good uncomfortable. This isn't bad uncomfortable. This is not you getting mugged uncomfortable. This isn't you getting made fun of uncomfortable. This is you. I've signed up for this thing because I want to train this and I want to learn this skill, or I want to test myself and see what I can do in highly stressful situations. That's a good uncomfortable. So again, jiu-jitsu, one of the beautiful things is to become comfortable with the uncomfortable, and it's good to find situations like that where you do get you're okay with the uncomfortable, and you learn how to harness those feelings and learn how to channel them into something positive.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a fear that you let those feelings get out of control and like overwhelm you, and then you get adrenaline dumps. That's kind of one of the fears that I've dealt with, or one of the things I've dealt with, just feeling flat because I let that feeling or that quote unquote fear or whatever it is take over, and I was not able to harness it.
Did you start doing that thing where you think too much? You start thinking about all the negative stuff that can happen? I feel like I'm yelling.
I think possibly like not wanting to lose. Like,
sure.
I don't want to lose. Which is, so it is
expectation.
It is kind of an expectation or an outcome, and I'm not being present in the moment.
Yeah, it's a Zen thing, right? They talk about that all the time in Zen, right? It's like not being anywhere else but here, right now, doing the thing. You're not thinking about whatever's happened. You're not thinking about in the future. You're not thinking about the past. You're not looking over the hill. You're not looking back over your shoulder. You're in the moment. And that's a beautiful place. And it's not easy to get there. That's the thing. It's like you can say it till you're blue in the face, but until you've been there, that's a different place to tap into mentally. And it's a beautiful thing. Like when I've competed and literally there is absolutely no reservation. There is no thought about winning and losing. There's simply, I'm trying to hit this technique on this person and we're going. Those are beautiful experiences because then you're just playing. You're no longer hamstrung by, well, what happens? Who gives a shit? Like it doesn't matter. Like in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It does not matter in the grand scheme of things. All that matters is that I want to walk off the mat knowing that I went for it. Even during the gym, people do this all the time where they want to go for something and they get hamstrung. Man, I should have tried that move. I've done it before, but we worry too much. Well, what happens if who gives a crap? We're playing. It's in those moments where you can kind of tap into that, and it's a beautiful thing if you can, because when you can tap into that present mind of just being in the moment, that's what they talk about in like Zen, where you're doing Zazen and stuff, just being in the moment. And they talk about, like, if you're drinking the coffee, be nowhere else but drinking the coffee. If you're cooking food, be nowhere else than the cooking food. Don't be thinking about anything else. Just cook the food with the wholeness. And so if you can compete, if you can train, if you can do all those things with the wholeness rather than thinking about everything else, it's a cool mindset to tap into. And it's something that I think everybody always talks about jiu-jitsu having a meditative quality to it, because your mind is so, it's so hard to think about anything else, right? That it sort of drives you into that mindset a little bit. But it's a cool thing when you can kind of tap into it.
Kind of like, I guess maybe like a flow state in a way. Yeah. But if you do find yourself, like you had a really crazy day, and you do have your mind elsewhere, you're probably going to get handled pretty well. Usually it happens. If you're not there, you're not quite.
Depends on your skill buffer. Depends on on how much skill you have versus the other person. Yeah. Because if you've got a lot, like for instance, like when
you can go on autopilot, I guess.
Yeah, because like if you're a white belt and you have a bad day, it's going to be a bad day, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a black belt and you have a bad day, you can probably still beat most of the people around you, or at least you can fend them off. You know what I mean? But when you're like the lower your skill is, the worse the worst days are.
Yeah, less room for error.
Right, exactly, because you have to be on if you're going to get anything going.
All right.
So here's one. We'll do this one real quick from Timo T, and then if you got one, you look for it.
I'll look for it.
Says, how do I deal with feeling bad about beating classmates? I like to win, but I always feel bad about beating my classmates, especially when I know they're trying as hard as they can, but they can't beat me and I'm better than them. Sorry, I'm just making a fun voice, Timothy. Don't. I'm not making anything personal to you. So, beating your classmates, I'm sure everyone has heard the term "iron sharpens iron," right? So, what does that mean? Iron sharpens iron. It means that in order to make the thing sharper, you have to have something of equal hardness, right? So, for someone to make you better, you have to have hard people around you to do the same. So, when you're beating people, it's not a bad thing, because you're going to make them better, because they're going to have to step their game up. And then they're eventually going to beat you, and then you're going to have to step your game up, and you guys go back and forth. It's a beautiful dance that you do. So again, it's if you're going into it where you're like rubbing their face in it, like where you beat them, you get up and flex on them, and just beat you, whatever. That's not good. But if you get up and you beat them, and that's what we're doing. It's a competitive thing. It's a beautiful thing. Being competitive is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to beat people. So beat them. And beat them again until they learn how to defend what you're doing, and they'll figure it out, and then they'll figure what you're doing, and then they'll beat you, and you'll just go back and forth. It's a beautiful thing, and that's how you make each other better. That competitive drive that's in the gym, that's what makes everyone else around them better, because again, we're all trying to beat each other. We're all trying to get each other, just like Eugene. Like when he was talking about trying to beat me, and then I've got to turn my burners up because I've got to go up to a higher level now because he's gotten better. So now I've got to go a little higher, and he'll keep going up along the way. So it's not a bad thing to beat your teammates, and just be okay with that, because if having the chance, they'll beat you too. Simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just be respectful about it. Obviously, like, it's okay. Like if you're on the other end and you're like getting somebody keeps submitting you with a certain move, so hey, what can I do to be better, or what advice do you have? I mean, there's nothing like, or what were you doing there? I think there's nothing wrong with asking, and usually your training partners are willing to share information, and they're not. It's like I'm keeping it all for myself. Yep. Everybody's willing to share, and again, make each other better. Mm-hmm. So like sometimes, like if you submit someone, like Chewy, you've done that before. Like, hey, look, this is what happened. Try to do this next time. Mm-hmm. Like you've said that. It doesn't come out of a place of you being an ass or rubbing it in. It's like, dude, I'm just trying to teach you or help you come along. So. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Guys, thank y'all for hanging out.
So it's fun hanging out with you guys. If you guys have any questions for another time, save them, because we'll do one of these again. This one was kind of, usually we try to give you guys at least a week or a couple days heads up, depending on the situation. But we had a guest who, had some family issues, so we decided to throw this in there. So if you guys missed it, you can either go watch it on YouTube. It'll be up on iTunes and Stitcher and all the other podcast places later on in a couple weeks. But
this will be Monday. It'll be out Monday.
Okay, be out Monday. So otherwise, guys, appreciate you guys for stopping by. Appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. And we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.